His commentary and analysis is among the best, bar none. His words serve as a masterclass. He deconstructs the deceptions of the PSYOP war. He is the author of The Greatness Awaits You, the national leader of Australia One Party Incorporated, a monthly panel participant in JMC's Global Defense War, in a league of his own, an international treasure, a follower of Jesus Christ. He is Riccardo Bosi. Riccardo Bosi is a published author and speaker, international business consultant, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel, having served 24 years in the Australian Army, including postings to the Special Air Service Regiment, the 1st Commando Regiment, Headquarters Special Operations, and the U.S. Combined Joint Task Force Headquarters in Kuwait. Don't miss JMC Broadcasting's Bosi Briefs, where John sits down with Ricardo, helping to connect the dots, making sense of the madness, keeping us all grounded and united as the battle between good and evil play out before our very eyes. Join John and Ricardo every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at jmcbroadcasting.com.
Saturday, May 9th, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to Bosi Briefs. And thank you very much for joining us again. This program publishes every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where retired Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi weighs in on current events. Please share these episodes and subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com. A few announcements before we bring Ricardo on. Juan O'Savin's in the house. This is our all-new Patriot Q&A Power Hour. Juan and I on screen, I acting as your host, and Juan as our featured guest to answer your questions live in our private Zoom room. To learn about this option, visit jmcbroadcasting.com and click on Premium Portal and see if this is a fit for you. If it is, we certainly look forward to seeing you then and there. All right, next announcement, very new here happening in the world of Juan O'Savin is the Fraud Fighter Summit. June 15th through 17th, you see it on the screen. Visit fraudfightersummit.us, where Juan and team takes on bond fraud, government waste and corruption, election fraud, pretty much every corner you turn, there's fraud. It'll be addressed by a panel of experts over the 3-day event. Be there. Las Vegas, Freedom Fighter Summit.us. Meet Juan O'Savin and his Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack. Next image. Next image is what we see here coming at us. Another plandemic, another health scare, another event. We know the playbook. We'll be talking about this with Ricardo, but the reason this is on the screen is because we are going to begin in the month of June the same level of coverage you're receiving, to our viewers I'm speaking, on the military intelligence and economic reporting we do with Riccardo Bosi here on Bosi Briefs and the 2 military panels, Sheila Holm, all the broadcasting we do, we're going to do the same level of content creation and staying on lean, mean reporting with the medical experts, all the great doctors we know, including the filmmaker Mickey Willis, who's got a new one streaming soon. We will be interviewing all of these doctors the world over to take this on head on, just the way we did at American Media Periscope way back when on the first go-around. Well, we're here now on the second go-around, and we are thoroughly armed with the power of knowledge of our doctors. So stay tuned. We'll be launching Crawl, Walk, Run starting in June, healthcare here at JMC Broadcasting. Next image. We'll also be launching, and Ricardo and I will be discussing this in just a few moments, because today was the day. I'm in Thailand. It's my Saturday. I wake up in the morning and I see the files are released, at least the first tranche of drip, drip, drip on UFO-related matters. Thank you, President Trump. And to support the opening of this narrative by our Commander-in-Chief, JMC Broadcasting will be launching a new monthly panel show, same style you're used to on our Global Defense War panel, with a core panel and a revolving 4th seat each and every month, weighing in on the UFO, alien, extraterrestrial related information as the president has just begun to leak this information out, to give this information out to the American people. All right, next image. Set up a little monologue here to set the tone, get us in the zone, and we'll bring on Riccardo Bosi. The Fed arrests aliens, kings, and more. Allow me to comment. Patriots, we told you to watch, and you watched. Now watch closer. When the news becomes the news, that is the moment they cannot spin, cannot bury, cannot explain away. That moment is accelerating toward us like a freight train on a track they thought that they had disabled. They were mistaken. The mainstream media's downfall is no longer a prediction. It is a spectacle. Every lie exposed, every narrative shattered, every talking head forced to answer for decades of deception. Decades of deception. The house of cards is not just falling, it's being pushed. This precision military operation continues. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you to the White Hats. Thank you to every patriot in uniform who chose oath over order, Constitution over corruption, and keep that in mind as Plandemic 2 seems to be on the horizon. What you are witnessing is not chaos. It is choreography, the dismantling of a deep state apparatus that believed itself untouchable. Well, that all changed with the election of 2016. The exposure of networks that operated in darkness for generations. The operation continues, and it is precise. And go Kash Patel, FBI director, James Comey indicted, turned in, and arrested. The dominoes are falling. James Comey, the face of the Russia hoax, the architect of the coup attempt, the man who thought he could weaponize the FBI against a sitting president, game over, sir. Not investigated, not questioned, indicted and arrested, turned in by the very system he thought he controlled. Go Kash Patel. Go everyone who refused to bend the knee. This is not justice theater. This is accountability. And Comey is just the beginning. Arrests, aliens, and kings. The three threads are converging as we speak. Arrests, the sealed indictments are unsealing. The names you were told to remember are being called. Military tribunals have been, are, and will remain active. The civil justice system was compromised. The military justice system is not. Swift justice. Aliens, the disclosure agenda has just begun today. Not as distraction, as preparation. The world is about to learn that we are not alone. And what comes next will change and will challenge every belief system you've held. Kings, the monarchies are falling. The bloodlines are exposed. The institutions that hid behind crowns and thrones are being stripped of their immunity. Prince Andrew was not the last. He was the first. As always, don't get ready. Be ready. Do not be shaken when the headlines feel overwhelming. You were shown all of this for a reason. Be ready in mind, grounded, discerning, not moved by noise or distractions. Be ready in resources, assets outside the system, supplies secured. Be ready in spirit, prayerful, patient, trusting the timeline. Prayer, persistence, and patience. The Fed is imploding. The arrests are accelerating. The alien truth is emerging. And the kings, they're falling. And when the news becomes the news, the awakened will not panic. Pardon me. They will act. There's a big difference. All right. And pardon me, I've got some congestion passing through for the interruptions this broadcast. For those just coming aboard, welcome aboard. Who is Riccardo Bosi? Well, you'll soon find out. Riccardo Bosi is an international treasure, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel who served 24 years in the Australian Army. He is the national leader of Australia One Party. Please welcome back to Bosi Briefs, of course, retired Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi.
Hey, John, always a
Good.
pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for your very kind invitation.
You bet. Thank you for being here with me and all of those around the world, multiple countries, watching our broadcast every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for being here. I've got a lot on the docket. I'm going to run through some stuff quickly, and then some things we'll spend more time on. There's been a high valued source I have who uh, there's a lot of question and chatter in certain circles. I'll leave it at that about DARPA. That DARPA is a real good group of folks up in the military that are taking care of us. So my question to you is: DARPA a part of the military, and that they are on the side of the people, or has DARPA turned dark and given us things under an illusion like the creation of Facebook to gather our information? Define DARPA, sir, to the best of your knowledge and ability.
Well, the short answer to your question is yes to both. Yes, it's full of good people doing good work. And yes, it is a dark organization that is establishing and has established for some time the architecture by which the rest of the planet is controlled. Army Defense Research Organization, the cutting edge. But once again, if you know the name and see the faces, that means it's a front for somebody who's providing that stuff to them. Yes, there are intelligent, hardworking people. In fact, we have a DARPA in Australia, same sort of role, but would be the Appalachian equivalent of yours. Let's just put it that way. Um, at one point, I was very keen to get involved because I was excited about innovation. This is going back into the 90s. And I saw that's where I would be most satisfied in my work, diving into the future. I didn't get the job. That's probably a blessing in disguise. What do they say? Uh, Rejection is God's protection. Never got involved with DARPA. But they're both good people, highly intelligent, highly innovative, creative minds in the military, but directed towards nefarious ends and certainly applications. So it is actually both.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, let's move on to quickly about our good friend, America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Drive-by news he came across. We'll come to that image in one moment. The drive-by news. All of a sudden, Rudy's in the hospital. He's at death's door, as seemingly reported. Miracle. All of a sudden, he's breathing again, and lo and behold, Rudy's okay. I don't expect you to have a ironclad, definitive explanation of this, but was this interjected in part of the script, or was our good friend Rudy actually in trouble? What do you make of this? President Trump's. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, I see too many possibilities. I'm the man that saw too much because I can see so many possible explanations. Unless I have definitive sort of analysis, it's hard to decide. It's a great little distraction, isn't it? Oh wow, we need something for 24 hours quickly. Let's distract the people. Rudy's sick. Okay. Oh, Rudy's better.
Right.
Seriously, I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, it could be both. I don't know. I don't know, but it's not a bad way of getting people to look the wrong direction just for 24 quick hours, uh, for whatever reason,
Mhm.
just to fill the limited spots available in the news cycle.
Thought that might be your response. One quick follow up on that before we get into some real red meat of current events. Um, Rudy Giuliani, published by Newsmax the other day, reported that the condition concerning his lungs, the pneumonia and so forth, was 9/11 related. So now that narrative gets entered in, and that's when I started to say, well, maybe there's what they're trying to pull out of this. I don't know. Uh, Rudy being somewhat of a controversial figure, he was dressed in drag on a Saturday Night Live many years ago. People are having fun with that. Some people have opinions about his involvement in 9/11. Uh, we know for certain he and President Trump have been very good friends and really cleaned up New York and transformed New York from something that it was to something much better. Um, but in either case, me personally, it's probably a bit of a script or taking advantage of perhaps an event he had. Who knows? But thank you for briefly weighing in on Rudy Giuliani, and I wish him well. All right, so let's move on. Let's look at put up that image of John and Ricardo. There they are, John and Ricardo. You know, that's what I feel like a little bit when we do our shows. Siskel and Ebert analyzing the movie, rating the movie, going over the script by script to have us weigh in on the current events, where the script has to have good actors, as you often say. I don't know, their names just crossed my mind the other day. Any fun comment, Ricardo, about that?
Oh, I think it's perfect. Thank you for that. That's you couldn't communicate a complex idea more simply with that simple photograph. And look, and we both understand that there's a narrative. The narrative has to be advanced. We understand that. There's no point spoiling the end because the author has a plan, and the plan has to be laid out as the author intended. But then we have other people that know what's going on behind the scenes, and we've got to meet both needs, both the target audience and those who are a bit informed. So yeah, it's a good picture. It's an interesting job we've got though. It's fascinating, and I can't help but laugh sometimes when when something weird just happens and we have to seriously look at the screen and discuss it. But look, just understand, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's a movie or real life, somebody's directing it. There is a plot, there are characters, and there is a very satisfying end in the end.
Thank you. You know, and on that note, a lot of people are in our movement are they're asking me, and I'm sure they're asking other people, when we hear, I think it's a cute quote, that the ending of this movie is not for everyone. And of course, that's what I call a big fat mystery sandwich. You don't know what you're biting into. And I, you know, an easy answer for me that comes to the tip of my tongue is very simple. Of course, the enemy's not going to like the ending. All those people that lived in the dark demonic world. That's to me on the surface what it means. But it could, you know, some people are dubbing in, well, Trump will be removed, or this problem will happen to that. Any quick comment about that before again we get into some red meat current headlines?
Yeah, this movie doesn't end for 1,000 years. The end of the end of the end doesn't come for a millennia. And we've got decades and centuries ahead of progressive ends to the movie, depending on what happens. And people might say, well, why is that? The simple example that we've discussed previously is once a generation who are emotionally attached to an event have passed, then it can be discussed more dispassionately. It's hard to be purely rational when the emotions are high. And so as people pass on, more and more, and the example I've used previously is the Kennedy assassination. Those of us who remember it have an attachment. Those who are born well after, sort of think, well, okay, that's as relevant as, I don't know, Woodrow Wilson signing a document, or some other president doing something a long time ago. It's interesting, but there's no emotional connection. And that explains why certain endings to this show, and this show goes for a long time yet, long time yet. There'll be endings that'll satisfy some, there'll be endings that upset others, and in time it will all eventually come out, but we're talking a long way down the track.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't know if image 3 is the next image, but to my producer, I'm going to start talking about healthcare. There it is. Thank you. Our good friend S.G. Anon, whom I've interviewed many times, as recent as a week ago, he published this up on X the other day. Did you know the development of hantavirus infection was a known adverse event arising from the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine? How interesting is that? And it's circled there, right in the disclaimers, if you will, of the COVID-19 vaccine. There it is before you. We know the playbook. Hey, look, let's see. It started on a cruise ship. Oh, yeah, I remember that. And then up one isolated case in this country. Up, we got one in Israel. Up, one over there in Europe. 10 in Miami. Hurry up, get your free piece of cheese, get your free donut, get your vax. We've seen this before, but this is really, I'm curious to see how this plays out with the level of awareness that we, the people, have raised with our brave frontline doctors and everybody else in between that did not follow with your supermarket distancing, your masks, and your vaccines. Ricardo, this is an important subject. How concerned are you about this as you see it unfold, if at all?
I'm terrified. I'm horrified. Quickly, get me a mask. I need more PCR tests. I'm sorry, but seriously. Okay, very quickly. the first bit of info I found about this was by a character called the Irish Patriot, who reproduced a leaflet, a health leaflet from a health department saying, this is back in the 90s, I think, that the hantavirus is not contagious, so everybody take a chill pill, relax, it's all okay, no big deal. The next bit that hit the screen, which added to my merriment, is a 1998 episode of The X-Files where Mulder and the other guy, the other character, whatever, I'd never watched the show when I was on, but they're heavily into conspiracy theories, and one of their deep sources indicates that this hantavirus is going to destroy the planet, and you should be aware of it. And so this is 1998 X-Files talking about the hantavirus. And
Wow.
so you start to
Wow.
think, okay. And then you start to watch the reports from the cruise ships. And two of the people that are actually reporting, you'd expect to see hundreds of photographs by hundreds of people on the cruise ship, either complaining that their trip was spoiled or it was whatever. And the two that get most prominence are both full influencers. And they're taking photographs, and the photographs are slightly different, but of the same thing. And it's the same weary playbook that the cabal has. See, that's the trouble. When you hire people and promote them based on their membership to an organization rather than their merit, they have no ideas. Genuinely creative people that can look at a blank sheet of paper and come up with a plan. I call it blank page leadership. Very few people can do it. A lot of people can be given a problem and they solve it. But the reason we see the same playbook over and over is these unimaginative trolls can't think of anything new. Oh, let's do it again. They won't notice. Well, yeah, we're noticing. And so for my money, with all the nonsense that's come out previously and what's coming out now, this will disappear like monkeypox, where only the parents of gay parents only had monkeypox. Why? Because they had sex with monkeys, and that disappeared really quickly because the people didn't buy it, which was fantastic at the time. This will go down the forgettery as quickly as everything else because people aren't buying it anymore. They can see the play and they're going, this is just complete nonsense. And this will disappear quickly too. So no more PCR tests, no more anything. It's just another brick in the wall, so to speak, that the people are building against mainstream information from any source. They don't trust anybody. And that's a key objective of the White Hats. They've got to get people to stop trusting. Because when the people stop trusting, they become less credulous. Then they start to think and they start looking for answers. And so this is, for me, comedy gold.
It is comedy gold. It reminds me of the movie review. Let's take a look at the movie we're watching when it comes to this new plandemic. To my producer, you can just pop that on anytime. But anyway, there they are. See, so there you go. This is what we're doing, folks. We're giving you talking about that script. What entered the script? Oh, another plandemic has entered the script. How exciting is that? Well, let's break this down. All right. Well, thank you, Rick. Let's go on forward to my producer. Let's talk about off-world. As you know, Ricardo, we raised this issue, I think, 3 episodes ago on our Global Defense Forum monthly military panel, of which you're a guest on. And you know, I approached the subject a few episodes ago, knowing that the president was going to eventually go there, because it's a subject that's really going to rattle a lot of stable data that people have operated their lives upon. And so I've had my opinions about off-planet, off-world things since I'm a child. But in this broadcasting seat that I'm in, I've chosen not to go there until 3 episodes ago when we cracked the ice, knowing President would do what he's done yesterday. And so we're going to be launching the show Off-World with JMC. It's a monthly panel, and it's coming in June, so stay tuned. But what's your take on this event? Let's put up the image to my producer that we just sent. Here's one. Let's go over that one. Okay, over 17. I'm going to dump out a few things that I see happening, Ricardo, in the last couple of weeks, in the last day, and have you weigh in. I picked this up off social media. Over 17 strange and unusual earthquakes have hit Area 51 in the past 24 hours. This was about a week ago. And then somebody posted, actually know the EG person, nice patriot lady in Florida. The great deception is about to happen. Aliens do not exist. They are demons. Now, right there, that opens up controversy and discussion, which we like to get into and other things. One more thing to my producer, the recent image I published, that military.gov or whatever the site was, let's get that up on the screen, please. Thank you very much. This is just released yesterday. Trump opens UFO files in historic government release. Now, I haven't gone through this yet. I realize this show is being broadcast Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. For me, it is Saturday as we're recording this here in Thailand. So I'll be chewing on all this over the next couple of days. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably not heavily loaded with the goods that people would like to see yet. More than likely, it'll be drip, 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 flood. Maybe I'll be proven wrong once I read this, but that's my stance on this. So I'm going to have some follow-up questions for you, Ricardo, but enter anywhere you choose on the now UFO file historic released by President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is, for those of you who are trying to figure out whether DJT is a good guy or a bad guy, a black hat or a white hat, a Zionist or an anti-Semite or a whatever, if you're still trying to figure out what he is, the plan's working beautifully. And I'm not trying to be clever here, because if you're still trying to figure out where he is, perfect. Because what's he got to do? He's got to keep everybody, including us, the great unwashed who are trying to make sense of this world, confused and uncertain, because that means the bad guys are confused and uncertain. And that means it gives the good operators out there room to maneuver, freedom of maneuver around the good guys and the bad guys. So if you're confused, if you can either take this as definitive evidence that Trump's part of the bad guys because Werner von Braun announced to his secretary that the great deception of ETs would be revealed, and therefore this confirms that Trump's a bad guy. And on the other hand, you've got Trump's a good guy because he's finally releasing stuff we've been demanding for many, many, many decades. And so if you're confused by it and you're still trying to make up your mind, fantastic. That's exactly what they're after. Now, if we get to the actual the meat of this particular question, the whole issue of ETs and why it's being revealed. Is it a distraction? Sort of, but in a good way, because this is what people want. Is it going to be a drip or a flood? I'm with you, John. It'll be slow and frustrating because, again, that's what they need to do. But there will be enough to really get people a little bit excited. Stephen Greer will finally be able to say, see, what I've been saying all this time is right. And there are people that don't like Stephen Greer, and there are people that do like Stephen Greer. He's the individual for those who don't know. Stephen Greer's been working for decades. He's a physician. He's very dedicated to revealing this. He's had many programs, reports, documents, testimonials from people who can verify reports, and so he's been one of those dogged pursuers for some time. So again, is this going to prove that Stephen Greer's a good guy or a bad guy? Neither. Sit back, watch it, make your own mind up. Now, that opening slide you've got, there are no ETs, and they don't like being called aliens. They like being called ETs. Gosh, how do I know that? They prefer ETs. Just let's leave it there. Do ETs exist? Are they demons? Okay, first issue here. Definitions. Definitions matter. What do you determine? What do you call a demon? What do you call an extraterrestrial? From where do you get your terms? Is it the Bible? Because something strange turned up, it was a demon. It says it was a demon. Could it have been an ET? Maybe. And now, because people can't define what they're talking about, and as John said, these are foundational beliefs. This is really going to rattle people. So is this about disclosure about extraterrestrials? Yes. Is it about beginning to crack open that white knuckle grip that some people have got on their foundational ideas of life on Earth, whether it's to do with spirituality, evolution? It doesn't matter. It's all at best grossly incomplete and mostly flat out lie. There's the problem. And so this release has at least two immediate impacts. One, it satisfies people to one degree, but it starts the larger issue for me. It starts a very slow journey where people are now going to be confronted with facing a different reality in terms of the basis of their relationship to the Almighty and no Almighty. So it doesn't matter whether you're an atheist, agnostic, or a believer. This is going to start to challenge you because you're going to have to start thinking about these things in quite some depth. What does it mean to me? How do I know how to live? Are the 10 Commandments real? Was Yahweh just another ET that had a low-grade tribe of proto-humans to look after? And he wasn't a very nice guy, as has been claimed in certain books. For example, was he God? What do I now believe? Are the 10 Commandments sound? Is the Bible completely fallacious? We know much of it is. We know much of the Old Testament particularly is Babylonian satanic magic ritual. The original Hebrew religion was smashed into that, like they tried to do recently with Chrislam by smashing Christianity and Islam together. And they had this magnificent setup in the United Arab Emirates where you had a temple and a church and a mosque all together, all holding hands, where there was Chrislam but no Christ. This is again the old playbook, that they are not imaginative. So the existence of ETs as opposed to demons as step one, that's going to terrify just about everybody and will excite the rest. But it's beginning to crack that greatest of all fears that we have. What is my understanding of life on Earth? Because this now changes everything. Now, can you get through that? Absolutely. You can get through it. Don't sweat it. You're okay. I remember, and there's a personal example. And this was just part of my own development as a young man, I guess. And allow me just to wax lyrical for a bit here, John, if you don't mind. Excuse me. I was sitting in the officers' mess at the Special Air Service Regiment on a Saturday, watching the footy, having a great old time, bottle of Coke, packet of chips. Life was good. And as I sat there, it occurred to me, this question popped into my head, and you can guess the origin of the question. And it said, is cold the lack of heat, or is heat the lack of cold? Now, that's an odd question to hit a young captain in the Special Air Service Regiment, but it did. And so I stopped paying attention to the TV and started thinking about it. And that quickly morphed. Is light the lack of dark, or is dark the lack of light? And it started to get clarity. And then it changed to, is good the lack of evil, or is evil the lack of good? And then I ended up with, is God the lack of devil, or is devil the lack of God? And these are pretty simple philosophical questions that any junior woodchuck would ask themselves if they're serious about determining their relationship with life. The short version of that particular journey in that time of my life was, I came to the conclusion, although being raised a very good Catholic, and I was a very earnest young Catholic boy, I'd go to chapel at lunchtimes at school, go to church after school sometimes as well. But then I discovered alcohol and women, and my views of life changed just a little. And the conclusion as I started this philosophical journey of my own was, there is no God, and that's okay. There's no God. It's just life is life, and you're born, you live, you die. And I had to get to the conclusion, if that's true, excuse me again, if that's true, I had to decide, well, what rules do I apply? Because I can't just take somebody else's rules and apply them because I've been told to. That doesn't show any independence of mind or spirit. And so at the ripe old age of whatever it was, I don't know, 27, I guess, 28, something like that. I decided I had to come up with a complete philosophy for life to determine all of my thoughts, words, and deeds that were consistent with my understanding of the nature of life on Earth, which is there is no God. And so I had to rebuild an entire ethical structure for myself during those few years. Long story short, I came up with pretty much what we have now, based on, well, do I want to wake up in a country where there are no consequences? You can do what you like. You can rape, kill, murder, steal, and it doesn't really matter. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. There's no set value system. I said, if that's the case, even if there are no value system, is that a world I want to wake up into? Open the door and die on the spot, and there are no consequences. I'd rather live in a happy world where you live and let live. Let me live my life, you live your life, and let's not interfere with each other unless we're doing something really bad. and ended up with basically a Christian a Christian ethic, but based on the fact that I choose to live a good life, even though it doesn't matter one iota whether I do or not in terms of after the life. Things changed after that, and that's another story. The point is this is a journey we've all got to go through, and this is the major point of this ET exclosure from my perspective. Is it interesting? You betcha, it's fascinating. Wait till you find out the types of species that are out there. There's the tall, skinny ones. There's an ET life form. You've got to call it that because it's consciousness, but it comes in the form of a gas of cloud. There's an ET consciousness out there that is super dense material that exists at the very edge of the known universe. And a teaspoon of this material is so dense, if you brought it to planet Earth, it'd collapse the Earth. The gravity is so great. And so all these things will be revealed, and it'll get you thinking. So just so we're clear, are there ETs? Oh, yes, there are. And I'm not talking about one of my ex-wives. I'm actually talking about extraterrestrials, and they come in many forms. And for those of you whose mind is spinning now, don't put God in a box, please. I'm sure the one thing that he finds most amusing is when we say, "Oh no, God can't do that." Yeah, God can do what he likes. So anyway, it's a fascinating time to be alive. I'm glad this is out, not because of the ET stuff, but because it is now the beginning of a serious move by the White Hats to start wresting away from people some of the most profound lies that they have bought into. And in starting that journey, which you'll make it through, relax, it's all okay. You'll make it. You're going to have to let go of a bunch of stuff, but you'll make it. But in going through that journey, you'll begin to be liberated in a way you cannot imagine. It is just extraordinary. Not necessarily easier, but you're a whole lot freer.
Thank you very much. I'd like to extend an invitation to you. I know your schedule is very busy, but if you can find the time to join us on that panel, Off-World with JMC, the invitation's been publicly requested. Thank you, sir. And Sandy will get with you as we begin to launch our premiere episode. You'll see some familiar friends that we have that'll be in that show, but there'll be some new folks that haven't crossed through my path that we're looking into right now to comment on that broad subject. Me, I'm thrilled. I just find it fascinating. Again, Siskel and Ebert. I'm watching the next script unfold, and it's getting interesting. And I, for one, won't be rattled on my grounding in terms of it bumping up against biblical issues. I know what my belief is in our Creator, and I'm very, very strong there. And there's so much we don't know. I don't know. Is it 22 books of the Bible that was kept from us, Ricardo? How many books did we rescue out of the Vatican tunnels? I mean, there's so much we don't know that we were intended to know. And this might be a piece of that. Who knows? Let's move on to some of the, we can spend a lot of time on this, but because there's a lot more to cover in this episode, and I'm trying to keep it under 2 hours. So comment briefly from a 40,000 foot view, because there is so much going on, but we have to talk about Iran, NATO, EU, and Cuba for a moment. And so let's begin. Iran has been so fluid. It's almost day by day. Another strategy by our commander in chief is having to be deployed based on the nonsense we keep hearing out of Iran. What's the current situation there? How do you see it playing out? What's going on?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and I'll come at this with a strange approach. Our head of intelligence, the head of the Australian Secret Intelligence Service, that's our equivalent of your CIA, and the minister responsible recently exposed an online $74 million to tracking radicalization of people online. They've just woken up. There's a problem. Well done. But what was interesting out of the whole statement, this is, ladies and gentlemen, when you watch the mainstream media, watch really carefully and then listen really carefully, because the one line out of the whole thing, which was just fluff, they're going to target specifically Sunni radicalization. I went, really? Not Islamic, but Sunni. Now, there's a message in that. Why would they be targeting Sunni? Well, okay, it's the opposite of Sunni. There are many, many sects of Islam, but the two major, as we know, the largest is Sunni, the next largest is Shia. And where the Shias live, Iran, So they're not targeting Iranians. They're not targeting. This is for public consumption. The Australian government is not worried about anything coming out of Iran and radicalization, but the Sunnis, which is the rest of the Islamic world. That's not a bad thing, but it's not the whole thing. So I said to myself, why? Why are the Sunnis being targeted and not the Shia? What's going on, Iran? And this is what's going on right now. I mean, that's anybody's guess because none of us have, I promise you, none of us except DJT and his people have a clear idea what's going on. There are claims the entire Navy's gone. The claims the Air Force is gone. That they're sending out a few whaler boats with drones on them to do their best, etc. Again, I don't believe any of that at all. I think they're keeping this little wound festering because there's so much to come out of it. And it's not about the Straits of Hormuz, although, you know, at first glance you say, well, how can one nation interfere with operation on international waters in the sense that it's a strait, they don't own the strait, it's always a tense negotiation between neighbours when the two exclusive economic zones and Nordic and the sovereign limits out to 12 miles, when they bump into each other, you've got to negotiate that. But the fact that this has been allowed to run for so many years with Iran threatening to close it has been a big deal. But it has never really been anything other than collection of tolls basically as they go through it. It's a money-raising venture. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the black hats need money to run their show. Nobody does this work for nothing, except silly fools like me at A1. But the point is this. So what's going on in Iran right now, they're keeping it open because there are bigger issues at stake, and it has very little to do with the Straits of Hormuz, or that's the stated reason why it's an issue. If they needed to, excuse me, they could leave right now because Iran's under control. Anybody saying that there's still a war to be had and they're terrified that a boots on the ground will end up in tens of thousands of American deaths, they're doing that to frighten children and old ladies. There is no threat there, but they're keeping it alive in order the discussion going, in order to cover up other things. Now, I've alluded to this before, and you mentioned ETs earlier. There are extraterrestrial and let's just say spiritual and ET connections to Iran that are quite profound that need to be taken care of as well. And that's amongst a range of other issues. We also know, courtesy of people at Promethean Action, for example, that it's a major control point for the City of London to control the Middle East. So there are multiple issues going on, and that's why Iran has been allowed to survive as long as it did. When the Ayatollah first took over and the Shah was thrown out, that was a big step forward for the cabal because there was an obvious control. The Shah of Iran at that stage could see exactly what was going on. He actually gave an interview, I think, to CBS reporter, I can't remember, describing exactly what we know to be the truth today, that there is a Khazarian/Jewish control of the US media, amongst other things, and they are running the show. And so that he had to be replaced, and it was. And they've been doing something like 47 years, I think. They've been controlling it. So they've got to keep this wound apparently still open. It's not, but apparently still open with nonsense discussions because there are other issues. I've mentioned a couple, and I don't doubt there are many more that I'm not aware of. But that's why it's being kept alive. Not because the Iranians are putting up a stellar fight. They're not. They're done. They're finished. They're under control, like every country on the planet is under control. But the people beneath them have to believe that that is not the case. And that's why I started with that first comment. If you're trying to figure out whether DJT is a good guy or a bad guy, a black hat or a white hat, perfect. Because there are still the lower level elements that have to be cleaned out. I mean, we're talking about not very bright people that all of a sudden might be extremely powerful in terms of their capacity to cause dramas. And the white hats don't want too many dramas.
Yeah, some of those people that may not be too intelligent lined up for their vaccine so they can get a cheeseburger and a donut. And let's hope they've risen up the scale of intelligence since then and don't go fall for that again. But great points you raised there on Iran and the world situation. So we can be brief on these. NATO and EU, the European Union, particularly France and Germany. There's a lot I see going on there. And of course, us slowly but surely looking to me like we're done with NATO and to an extent finding out who's who and what's what in Europe. What's your opinion about that pocket and some of the, at least the optics that were being
Yep.
shown? Comment on those optics
Yep.
and pull the curtain back a bit.
Yeah, NATO's been shown for what it is, and he's closed the page on that in terms of the public narrative. Yeah, we asked for your help, you didn't give it to us, you're on your own. Not interested anymore. We're pulling out. Look after yourselves, which is a big problem for them, not for the US. It's good for the US, not good for Europe.
Right.
The other issue is this. You mentioned France particularly, and here's a bit of a signal. The dismantling of the control mechanisms in Europe, NATO being one, EU being another. But then you've got the Masonic filth. We call them the Masonic filth here in Oz. Now, what's that got to do with it? Well, the Masons run everything. Now, the fact that, and there's an article or a court case in France, I think it started March, started in March, where there was a Masonic grouping that were being charged with having or exercising their desires via hit squads, assassinations for anything that got in their way. Now, this is now unique because you want to go back to the French Revolution. That was a Masonic event. The French Revolution, ladies and gentlemen, if you weren't aware of it, was a Masonic event that was intended to destroy a lot, and it achieved that objective. That's why it became such a bloodbath. What was sold as initially as the fraternity, equality, and whatever the hell they talk about in France, other than croissants, wasn't the case. It was turned into a bloodbath because the Masons needed to destroy the country, which they did. And so to have a public trial now charging a Masonic lodge with running hit squads it's sort of interesting in and of itself, but it's going to send reverberations through the Masonic organization. Their top cover, I think I mentioned previously, their top cover is gone. If this is happening, how can it be happening? We run the country, we run the planet. How can we be doing this? Because we know that a Mason judge and a Mason lawyer can never hurt another Mason, no matter how guilty they are. Even in warfare, it was found that when two Masons from the opposite sides saw each other, they didn't engage. That's how powerful this oath the Masons takes is. And so in terms of France and Europe, the Masonic control has been dismantled by and large, but now it's being shown to the lower levels who are fully jabbed up. They're gigavaxxed. They weren't told about it, and the lower levels are now panicking because the higher levels are no longer applying that protection. Those individuals from the polity, the judiciary, the bureaucracy, the military, the constabulary, that to this point have had a free ride with their criminal activities are now being charged, tried, found guilty, and punished. And this is setting reverberations through the Masonic organization globally. They are terrified. They have no idea what to do next because this is not a world they understand. They literally run the planet. And now what? The French lodge that has a hit squad out there is being charged. They're terrified. So it's the control mechanism in Europe has been dismantled. We know that. But now it's being publicly revealed by these charges in order to show the lower level Masons who still haven't got a clue. And there are still a lot of people in the polity, bureaucracy, and military and constabulary that don't know because they're not allowed to watch shows like this. I can tell you in Australia, for example, if any military officer is found watching any of Bosi's broadcasts, they get a visit. They get a knock on the door and they get a visit from some very important people saying, what are you up to? Because you're guilty of bad things because you've been watching Bosi and Bosi says things we don't like. I got warned a few years ago, a couple of times. Don't do it. Stop it. You don't know what you're playing with. You've got to stop talking about it. Just don't talk about it. They're all sweet biscuits. They lack the moral courage to do what's right, to think what's right, to say what's right. And that's fine. But that's what's happening in Europe. The structure, which has been dismantled, is now being revealed to be no longer in control, and it's panicking the entire Masonic world. They are,
Absolutely.
before said there's a schism. They're fracturing now. They are literally fracturing, which is great news.
Yeah, that's a great analysis and summary at the end there. So that's what I was hoping to extrapolate. We got it on the record. There it is, folks. Let's talk about that little island 90 miles south of Key West, Florida, known as Cuba. Obviously, the people are suffering greatly there, always have been since Castro took over. And And now it's extraordinarily difficult because of the operation we conducted in Venezuela and so forth. But again, I hate to say this, I'm not insensitive to the people of Cuba, but no pain, no gain. Break down the Cuba bubble, if you will, the way you just broke down NATO and Euro. What's happening with Cuba and where does it end up? Cuba's up for grabs as I see it.
Yeah, well, it's already been grabbed. It's. I can tell you the last chapter for Cuba. It's going to turn into an island paradise. The people will be set free. They'll be free to now pursue their lives the way they wish. It's going to be as popular as any of the tourist resorts you can imagine, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a fantastic world for the Cubans. Now, as you said, no pain, no gain. They have to learn to step up because after so many years of communism, and I can tell you from first-hand experience in Australia, when you've got an entire population that has been demoralized, poisoned, brainwashed, it's going to take them a while to wake up and actually realize that they are free in what they can do. Again, the analogy we've used before is the prisoners out of the concentration camps and labor camps in Germany. The Allies turned up, threw the gates open, and they just stood there waiting for orders. Now, we have entire populations on the planet, Australia included, that are waiting for orders. Cuba will be the same. So there's going to be this gentle move forward to allow the Cubans to take over. Thankfully, there'll be a massive exchange with the Cubans in the United States. We're going to go back to Cuba and say, hey, this is where I want to be, and I'm going to set my business up.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, if you get the health right and the wealth right, watch these countries explode into productivity and abundance. And so that's what's going to happen to Cuba. But right now, it's the image we are getting. They're still suffering. The communists are still under control. They're not really communists. We know that this is a criminal cartel. They appear to be under control. They appear to be in control, but they're not. They're under control. Again, it's all being rolled out very slowly in order to achieve what they need to achieve. But Cuba is going to be a paradise one more time, and not necessarily by corrupt casino operators, which it was previously, but genuine opportunity for the people to live their lives as free individuals. It's going to be brilliant.
Yes. Beautiful. That was my thought process too. It can return to what it once was, as you said, perhaps to some degree, minus all the corruption in casinos. But it was a glorious island place many years ago. Hemingway used to go there all the time, and then of course we knew what happened over the last 60 years. Well, thank you for weighing in on those things. Let's talk about Australia. I know you've got some information prepared that's really important for the whole world to listen to because there's a lot of lessons in here. But the history is about events that took place in Australia that we need to learn about, we need to remember, and we need to learn from. So why don't you take this segment of the show over, Ricardo, please, if you will, and then I'll return on screen with you and cover some other material of current events and some very interesting things at the end of this broadcast. So don't go anywhere, folks. But take it away, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi, please.
Okay, Michael, if you could bring it up. There you go. I'm going to go through these slides. Now, this is the 30th anniversary. We just passed it, of the Port Arthur massacre, 28th of April, 1996. Port Arthur massacre was on the mass shooting that occurred on the 28th of April, 1996, at Port Arthur, a tourist town in the Australian state of Tasmania. Tasmania is a little island at the southeast corner across from the mainland. The alleged perpetrator, Martin Bryant, murdered 35 people and wounded 23 others in the deadliest massacre in Australian history. The attack led to fundamental changes in Australian gun laws. In fact, this was the trigger that the then Prime Minister John Howard used to strip the Australian people of their guns. And so there was a so-called buyback, as if we bought them from the government in the first place. But a buyback was arranged, and most people sold their weapons to the government, and the government then allegedly destroyed them. Well, we know that that's not quite true. They were sold off for profit to other organisations for their nefarious deeds. But that's why we have no guns in this country. Now, fortunately, I am told that many people's weapons, they just fell off the back of the boat as they were travelling across the dam. And other weapons just fell off the back of the truck as they hit a bump down the dusty road. So not all were handed in. Next slide, please, Michael. Now, this photo appeared in every newspaper in the country within a day, totally illegally, of course, as there'd been no trial and no verdict. The opinions of the Australian people appear to have been intentionally poisoned. They were. The face of a killer. It was just too beautifully coordinated. Immediately, this picture went up, and people said, "Yes, he looks crazy. He's mad. Look at him. I can say this is the guy what done it." Is what they intended to do, and that's what they managed. Next slide. Now, Bryant's average height, 5'8". He's got an IQ of 66. That's like a 9-year-old. And he was kept in solitary confinement for 5 months until he changed his plea to guilty. Now, imagine taking a 9-year-old, locking him up, torturing him, denying him food, water, light, and worse. And then you're surprised he gives a guilty plea. Now, the guilty plea was necessary because there would be no longer a trial. Now, an ex-military whistleblower claims that Martin Bryant was tortured in prison. And here's a quote from one of the witnesses there at the actual massacre. "I've known Martin Bryant from the age of 10 years until he was 23 years old. I did not recognize the male, the shooter, as Martin Bryant. The person I saw shooting appeared to be in his low 20s and 5 foot 10 inches tall, much taller." And the witness statements started coming out. It wasn't Martin Bryant. So what's going on? Next slide, please. Now here's the front page of the Tasmanian Mercury. Came out in 2017. This is interesting. I'll read. I've transcribed what it says on the front, and then you can make up your own. And I'll talk about who this chap is. Martin Bryant is innocent. Brigadier Serong believes more than one person was involved. Whoever did it had skills way beyond anything that could reasonably be expected of this chap Bryant. Now, the small print says this. In an interview with Frank Robson in the Sydney Morning Herald on the 10th of April 1999, Brigadier Serong makes it plain that Martin Bryant could not have been responsible for the mass murder at Port Arthur. There was almost a satanic accuracy to the shooting performance, he says. That was interesting. Whoever did it is better than I am, and there are not too many people around here than better than I am. He continues, whoever did it had skills way beyond anything that could be reasonably expected of this chap Bryant. If it was someone of only average skills, there would have been many less killed and many more wounded, and that made me open my eyes first off. Brigadier Serong believes there was more than one person involved and directly infers that the mass murder of Port Arthur was a terrorist action designed to undermine Australian national security. Now, what he meant by national security is removing the guns from us. He could see exactly what was going on. Now, is this Brigadier Serong just a soldier who's giving an opinion? No, he's much more than that. And let's go into Serong just to give weight to this man's assessment. Okay, next slide, please. Brigadier Francis Philip Ted Serong, DSO, that's his Distinguished Service Order and the Order of the British Empire, was a senior officer of the Australian Army. Second World War, he served mainly in training and staff roles, but saw combat against the Japanese in Wewak. He established the Jungle Training Centre, the JTC, at Canungra, that's in Queensland, in 1955, and developed the Army's counterinsurgency doctrine. So this is a man of quite some intellectual ability. It's not just a matter of how to take a shot, because you can train just about anybody to shoot straight, but this guy is a thinker. He instructed the armed forces of Burma in jungle warfare in the late 50s and was a strategic advisor to the Burmese army from 60 to 62. Serong was appointed to command the Australian Army training team in Vietnam, the AATTV, in 1962. And that was Australia's first push into the Vietnam War. He had 30-odd senior advisors and became an extremely influential, despite the small number in his team, extremely influential with the American forces there. Next slide, please. He was later seconded to the Americans and was a senior advisor to the South Vietnamese Police Field Force between 65 and 68, establishing one of their schools. And leaving the army in 68, he remained in Vietnam as a security and intelligence advisor to the South Vietnamese government, as well as working for the RAND Organization, Hudson Institute, and other corporations, and consulting to the Pentagon and several US presidents directly, secretaries of states and presidents. So this man is highly connected. Now, when I started reading this, I thought, whoa, I've got alarm bells going off. This guy looks like it to me. He continued to serve in Vietnam until after the fall of Saigon. In fact, he came off one of the last helicopters before Saigon fell. And he was considered a world authority on counterinsurgency warfare and wrote widely on the subject. Now, this Ted Serong was, and I thought to myself, well, hang on, this guy sounds deep state. But then I read more into his background. He was a very good friend of A.B. Santa Maria. Now, who's A.B. Santa Maria? For Australians of a certain age, you'll remember A.B. Santa Maria, who was a very strong anti-communist, hugely anti-communist. He was a Catholic, as was Brigadier Serong, as a Catholic and hugely anti-communist. And that's why he joined the army in the first place. Graduating from the Royal Military College, I think, in 1937. But that's why he joined the army in the first place. He was anti-communist. He could see what was going on. So he was a true believer in the best sense of the word. So whilst he was certainly making his way up into cabal territory, he was a man of quite some independence. In fact, he was described by Major General Adrian Clunies-Ross, another Australian Army officer. The Clunies-Ross family, again, is famous in Australia. They owned the Cocos and Christmas Islands and ran them as separate fiefdoms, not as part of Australia, but as separate fiefdoms until they were persuaded to become part of Australia. But he was, Clunies-Ross described Serong as having stormy relationship with his superiors. And the more I read about this bloke, the more I liked him. And he said he was undoubtedly a difficult subordinate with a profound conviction in his opinions and judgment and a highly independent streak. These characteristics did not always sit easily with those who had to deal with him. That almost reads like my graduation report from my officer training. I'm right. I know I'm right. I don't give a stuff what you think. I don't care what your rank is either. And so this guy had a very strong philosophical foundation to his beliefs. He's a Catholic, anti-communist, and he wasn't afraid to do what had to be done. So now for that man to turn around and look at this situation and say, Bryant didn't do it, and it smacks of the terrorist activities that he's very familiar with that were being executed by cabal organizations globally. He knew how they worked and why they worked, and he recognized the pattern. He recognized the play. Next slide, please. So the last slide, this is the last slide, and I encourage every Australian, and this is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen of Australia, go to the WASP's files. It's a video podcast. I'm not vouching for everything in the WASP files, but they're a video podcast series and a YouTube channel created by a filmmaker and actor called Paul Motor. And he's been investigating the massacre for years, and he has tremendous resources in terms of interviews with the people who were there, who survived it. The project questions the official narrative of the shooting, exploring potential inconsistencies and challenging whether the convicted gunman acted alone or not. This is incredibly important. This was part of the play to strip Australia, in my opinion, to strip Australia of its weapons. But the larger question is this. We know the Masons run this country. We know the Masons are running the hit squads in France. And so the question's got to be asked. Do the Masons in Australia run hit squads too? Because if they're happy to strip us of our lives, our health, and our wealth, do you think they really care about shooting a few people down the road in order to strip us of our guns? Of course not. Do they have hit squads? So if Bryant didn't do the shooting, and it's patently obvious, blind Freddie can see that Bryant didn't do the job. Who did the job? Well, you need some pretty good shooters. 35 shots, 29 to 35 dead with a high number of headshots. 29 wounded. The numbers are wrong. You needed not just one, but a number of good shooters to do it. So where do you get the best trained shooters? The army. Is it naive to think that maybe the Masons don't run the army? Is it naive to think that maybe the Masons don't run hit squads out of this country? Is it naive to think that they would pick the best shooters to do the job? Or even import some others if they need additional support? This is why this is critical. It's a tragedy for those who suffered, including American tourists who suffered at Port Arthur. They have yet to have any satisfaction, any inquiry. The Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, who then stripped us of our weapons, said, oh no, we don't want an inquiry because the wound is too fresh. It would cause too much pain. What, to discover the truth? That was the lie that was being touted. And with the mainstream media's assistance, that's what people bought. They bought it. So I'll wrap it up here. But the key point is this, ladies and gentlemen of Australia and the rest of the world, obliquely, please pay attention. The same could be happening in your country. But in this country, the Masons control the military control the shooters. Put one and one together and it doesn't come to three. But I'll leave it up to you to make up your own mind. Go to the WASP files, do your own research, and understand that much of what we believe to be good and right in this country is not. Thanks, John.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that history. I learned that I knew of none of these things other than the big headline that Australians gave up their guns. Let's hope an Australian one effort can restore those at some point down the line. You know, I'm going to jump into a completely different subject right now, non sequitur to pretty much everything we've been discussing, but not really. Why has President Trump been saying over all those years from 2016 forward, these people are sick? Put up the next image to my producer. You know, we all know of the great musician John Legend, all of me loves all of you. And this is his beautiful wife, model Chrissy Teigen, whoever you would like to say her name. Well, let's learn a little bit more about John Legend and this woman. And this is why these people are sick. Seeing these were all scrap. As I understand, tens of thousands, she wiped them all off, but they were all screenshotted by patriots out there. And here's some sick information. Seeing little girls do the splits half naked is just, I want to put myself in jail. There's a post. I'm bored. Really want to watch kids give birth. Where can I watch teens giving birth? MTV? I mean, that doesn't make sense, but I'll try. Nah, he just said the cleanest and best pleasure is to have sex with a 13-year-old. Up until that, ha ha ha. I'm going to jail over pizza. Now, why did I put this up? It's a bit non sequitur to the other information that we've covered this broadcast, but just to remind everyone that yes, the president is right. These people are sick. And we can see those that have been following the Epstein drips understand what pizza means, understand about children giving birth, because they did that. And then what did they do with these children and the children that were birthed? I don't even want to go there. You know the adrenochrome story. You know flesh eating. You understand the reports coming out from Ellen DeGeneres and many, many others. Not everyone, but we know who the cast of characters are now in Hollywood and music that subscribe to these sort of public posts that this woman had. Any brief comments, Ricardo, on these people are sick? Before I close this out with evidence that Donald J. Trump, our commander-in-chief, the supreme commander of the Global Defense War Alliance, redirecting humanity on this course correction and saving America. What he has stated, he was president all 3 terms. We'll come to that. We'll close the show out with that. But before we do, your comments on these people are sick.
Well, that's a statement of the obvious. We know that. But what's interesting is this, and I'm glad you put it up there because it is grotesque. The depravity is just breathtaking. Chrissy Teigen, well, she's not a woman for starters. And the fact that this star, inverted commas, however you want to define star, has been doing this for years and nobody said anything. Your silence has made you complicit. I'm talking to the mainstream media. I'm talking to Hollywood. I'm talking to the politicians. I'm talking to everybody. This has been going on and you've said and done nothing. So one more tip for people who are trying to figure out whether Donald Trump is a good guy or not. If you just open your eyes and ears, I think you'll be able to work it out. But this level of depravity, again, this is like the ET exposure. We're opening the door now. Or not we, but DJT is opening the door because what's coming next will be some of this depraved information that's going to really upset a lot of people. In fact, not to put too fine a point, and I know you want to move on, but I know of 2 senior military officers, I won't say which branch of the military they're in, at different times over the last couple of years have discovered, and they were good people, and they thought they were doing the right things for the right reasons. And when there was a knock on the door and the truth was explained to them, that they weren't innocent, but they weren't entirely culpable, if that makes sense. One sobbed uncontrollably, and I'm not talking a manly tear, like he really lost it. The second, to this day, still feels deeply sick and wounded. because he's worked so hard and he thought honorably for so long, and he's realized what he's been facilitating and been working on. And so that's what's going to happen to everybody when this, well, not everybody actually, to be honest. No, everybody won't. Only the good people with an actual conscience will feel bad and regret what they have done. The rest won't care. But that's what's coming next. And so that response is going to be more prevalent over the coming days, weeks, and months. People are going to be in a very bad way when they realize and they see the evidence. And everyone said, you'll go as far as you want to go. But as the truth comes out, there's going to be increasing anger. And that's already started. We're getting more and more people online sounding like me when I get all salty in my language. There's a lot of that more coming out now, and people are discovering it. So buckle up. It's going to get untidy.
Thank you. Yeah, look, to say we are in the phase of disclosure is an understatement of the century, and we're watching the world wake up and the various impact on how they're processing truths that have been undisclosed. And I took a little list of things here to remind our viewers of what, and this is a short list that I just did off the cuff here, but what are some of the big things that are happening right now at this phase of these battles? Well, we have the arrest of Comey and the low-lying fruit, we'll call it, in the FBI. All roads lead to Obama. We have the president on the record stating Obama committed treason, and we know what the punishment for treason is. We know military tribunals are ongoing. We know military tribunals are swift and not bought and paid for like the civilian courts. We know we've got this new fake virus coming. Not that the virus is fake, but this whole new narrative about a virus coming in to wipe us all out again. We see this, and this time it's really going to backfire, in my opinion. Then you've got, as we talked about in this episode, Ricardo, we've got, they don't like to be called aliens, extraterrestrials, call them what you wish, UFOs. We have that disclosure now. A couple of more items. We have everything we've witnessed since Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes blasted on Great Britain News some years ago and had those two show hosts for lunch and disclosed 1871 and what was really going on. We have that narrative fully revealed with the president and the Queen issue, the capitulation, President and King capitulation. We have last thing here, March 26th, Treasury Department, long press release, if you will, about the new currency. And nowhere in the press release did the words federal and Federal Reserve show up, but President Trump's name and Scott Bessent did on new currency. People are anticipating in July 4th. We'll see when it comes out. And then we close out with the reveals of Christy Teigen, as you just stated, questionably a woman, and all that entails that are still in the Epstein files and the Epstein issue. Not a lot of talk about it right now, which means a lot is actually going to be done. So you just threw a smattering at the dartboard, if you will, of some of the events that are happening. So anyone who thinks or still clings on to nothing's happening, maybe you got the 66-point IQ like that poor guy they used to set up in Australia, because things are happening, folks, in a very big way. And that brings me to this. Let's put this post up to my producer, please. This will finally give Derek Johnson credit due. Anybody running, this is your Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump. Anybody running for president or vice president should be forced to take a cognitive examination prior to entering the race. By doing so, we wouldn't be surprised that people like Barack, in quotes, Hussein Obama, or Sleepy Joe Biden getting, quote, elected, quote, quote, elected. Yep. Our country would be a much better place. I took the exam. Here we go. And this is why I put this up. The president says, I took the exam 3 times during my 3 terms as president. There you have it. So those that threw Derek Johnson under the bus, and he doesn't need me to defend him, say what you will about Derek and so forth and so on, but I know of nobody who's done a better job than Derek Johnson at understanding the law of war manuals, the PEDS, the executive orders, the history of these things, how they work, and how they're being explained to us, or he's helping us at least match it up to current events. But there it is, President Trump himself, 3 times. And as you know, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi, the president also schooled the generals and admirals by saying that what that dash represented on the cap. But here it is, 3 terms as president and aced at all times. He's speaking about the cognitive test, an achievement that even on a single exam, according to the doctors, has rarely been done before. President Donald J. Trump. This is the wrap of our show. With any other closing comments you'd like to leave us with, Ricardo. But I find this post, it's just a drive-by post. This should be front page news, right? And even people in our movement probably missed on this. Well, we already knew it. But what do you think of this? I find this fascinating.
Yeah, your rundown of all the evidence is overwhelming, and the 66 IQ comment, if people are offended by that, tough. I'm sorry, but seriously, the time has come. You know, time to turn off the TV and start reading for a change. But the 3 terms of the president is a lovely way to finish. The truth's out there. If you want to watch it, most people still won't buy it. They just won't. They just won't, because there are too many. It's too much too soon for just about all of them, and that's why the last thing that's going to get their attention is their money, because they genuinely won't be shocked if they're not shocked at if they're not shocked at full-term abortion enough to look into it, if they're not shocked in the child sex trafficking to look into it, if they're not shocked by any of those things, nothing will shock them. And it's not entirely their fault, as we've said, because they have been drugged, brainwashed, demoralized, and the rest of it. That scintilla to humanity that we think that we've all got, we don't. Culture can destroy that instinctive humanity that we're born with, and so they won't. And so even when the money, their bank accounts are zeroed out, they're going to be in a situation where their docility and their credulity will condemn them to sitting there waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. And this is probably the most upsetting but realistic reasons why military is the only way. Martial law. Well, the US is under martial law at the moment. Australia, under the suzerainty of the US, is under martial law at the moment. So if people are saying, what's martial law look like? You're looking at it. What you're looking at are directions for the benefit of the people by the leadership in its military form, and then one day again in a civilian form, but for the time being in a military form, doing the right things for the people according to a set of rules, and you cannot deviate from those rules. Everybody must apply. So you're looking at it right now, folks. It's just that it's not fully revealed to you. So if you like the idea of your country being cleaned up, if you like your idea of the political class and the bureaucratic class, the legal class, the military class, the police class that run us being cleaned out as they are, we're seeing that as well. And seeing it done effectively and efficiently, that's fantastic. It'll take some time, but you'll eventually get there. We're in great shape. You're under martial law now. It's happening. It's just not fully revealed. And it doesn't need to be, just by the way. And if anyone wants to complain, I demand to know. Really? My question is, well, what the fuck have you done to demand it? What have you done? And if the answer is nothing, and you'd be surprised, John, at the messages we get. Oh, I repost your social media. Why don't you let me attend your meetings? It's a pretty low bar you set yourself there. Ladies and gentlemen, and let me just finish on this. I'm currently working through a series called The Rebirth of a Great Nation. It's about 3 to 4 months every week, an hour presentation followed by an hour discussion afterwards for the A1 signed up people. And it's about 3 months because I'm actually treating the people as if they are capable, intelligent adults who are able to absorb the information and learn from it. And it's fascinating. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I am taking the elements of national power, and if national power, you'll get 4 or 5, diplomacy, military, things like that. And I said, that's not good enough. So let's really break it down. And I came up with 19 elements of national power. These are things that a people can do to advance their nation state. Then, through the filter of our end state, a sovereign, a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western constitutional republic, all the way through, that end state that I've described many, many times, we push those elements of national power through that filter. Then we push it through the filter of our twin strategy of an identity-first great power. Identity-first great power. That's our strategy, these twin pillars. And so we push the elements of national power. How do we use those to achieve our end state? How do we then use that to achieve our strategy, the twin pillars of our strategy, which is an identity first, Western Christian Anglophone identity and a great power status, Indo-Pacific hegemony, and global leverage to affect normative powers, the way things are done. How do we do that? And so we're actually going through this quite detailed process. It's not a set of cartoons for people to watch. And don't get me wrong, I love diaper diplomacy. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's not the basis for an education course to create an educated and moral people, whom your founding fathers said were the prerequisites for a free people, to be educated and moral. And so I'm taking us all through this for the next 3-4 months, once a week, every week for once a week. And then as we go through this, as I explained, and here's one for everyone on this audience to pay attention to. That's great. That's a top-down development of the preconditions for a good constitution. But the trouble with that's the federalist view, and the trouble with that is, and your people did it, the Americans did it, they're brilliant. The state's representatives said, "Hang on a minute, we want some enumerated rights." And the Federalists said, no, you don't need to, because you can deduce from this brilliant constitution we put together all the rights you need. And they went, nah, no, you don't. No, you don't. We want enumerated rights. We want it specified: the right to free speech, the right to defend yourself, the right to. And so the first 10 amendments were there. And the Federalists weren't happy with that, because they thought, well, this is a risk, because it looks like these are the only rights that will be fought for. No. This is where, in military sense, you've got your plan. But then at the bottom end of it, one of the last things you do is you examine the constraints and restraints. Now, the military people know what I'm talking about here. That sounds like the same thing, a constraint and a restraint. But you go through this process. You've got the elements of national power. You've got the national end state we described. We've then got the strategy, which is the identity first, great power strategy. But then you get the people to say, well, hang on a minute. We want to have a say. The people. This is top down. What about bottom up? And these constraints are what must be done, and restraints are those things that must not be done. And effectively, that's what the states did in the development of your constitution. They came in and said, no, we want these specifically enumerated, otherwise we won't sign. And I think it was Madison who was against the bill, the enumerated rights, and then became the great champion of it, because it risked the entire setup. And so the Bill of Rights went in. And so that's a long way of saying this journey to stand up for ourselves requires a moral and educated people, and we have to take the time to do it. And it's going to take the time to do it. We need to take the time. And that's what we need to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, and this applies to everyone around the world, you've got to do the same. Otherwise, you will be just following orders one more time by somebody else. If you want to get out of the military setup eventually, and this will take years, you better start now. So join us once a week if you want to. You can watch the show. It's called The Rebirth of a Great Nation, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Australia. And you can we're up to episode 3. Episode 1 was Foundations. Episode 2 was Geography. We spoke about the geography of Australia, and how to optimize that for our identity first, great power objectives. The second episode, which was this week, was Foundations. Then Geography was second episode. Next week, it's Natural Resources, and how you use your natural resources through this filtering process to become a great power in our objective, whilst leading with our identity first, changing nothing about who we are, which is a Christian Western Anglophone. Now, here's what I want to finish on. The word that I said that came out: subsidiarity. Now, what's subsidiarity? It sounds like some highly technical thing your accountant does to help you save money. No. Subsidiarity basically is that a superior organization must not absorb the powers of a subordinate organization. The subordinate organization must be free to do what it is capable of doing. It applies to an individual. The collective must not take away from an individual what that individual has the right to do for themselves. Now, this policy in practical terms means that as many laws as possible will be pushed down to the county level, where most of this stuff, where the rubber really hits the road, which is brilliant. And the higher you get up the hierarchy of governance, the less they have to say. So the federal government, for example, just worries about what the federal government should worry about. Defense, for example. Diplomacy, for example. They don't stick their nose in stuff that you should be worrying about at your level. And here's the lovely little thing that I added to the conversation about subsidiarity. It started with Aristotle, and he graduated up, as we have done. Individual, the town, the city, you work your way up. The individual, family, town, you work your way up. And each one should be left alone as far as they can be left alone. Then Sir Thomas Aquinas wrote about it, and it was promoted by 2 popes who said this was the basis of how life on earth should be. So we're talking about a Christian Western concept of subsidiarity, which is unknown and anathema to if it is known. And I said it's anathema to every other culture. No other culture has this other than the Christian Western culture has this concept of subsidiarity, where if you leave people alone to do what they can do, you have no right to take that from them. And so whilst this complex process is being undergone, some real brilliant takeaways are being delivered to the people who are watching. And subsidiarity is one of them. It's a Christian Western concept. It was promoted by the Catholic system for years. That's why it exists. That's why it's a Christian Western concept. No other culture has it. And that's why we're wedded to this identity first, a Western Christian Anglophone culture. And so there you go. That's a long advertisement. I'm sorry, John, but this is a moment in the war where we are future focused to ensure that the people are actually capable of taking charge, taking reins when the opportunity is presented to them.
Well, the rise of Australia has begun. Where can people find that body of work that you've just shared the 3 episodes with, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi? How can people listening to this broadcast locate that content?
That'll be, it's not up yet, but it'll be on our website, www.australiaoneparty.com. There'll be a button there. You hit the button and you can watch the shows, and you watch the shows. That's just setting that up for the time being. But that's where you can get it.
Excellent. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, it's been an interesting episode here as we get to review the scripts of the week. The last 2 weeks, Siskel and Ebert having a good time breaking down some of the events to help us make sense of the madness and connect the dots. Now, Ricardo Bosi has a book, I believe, in its 5th publishing. Maybe we have an image of that as well. And you can pick up a copy of this book at wilkinsonpublishing.com. Well, actually, it's wilkinsonpublishing.com.au. and also at Amazon.com. Greatness awaits you, Ricardo Bosi, retired Lieutenant Ricardo Bosi. You can learn more about Rick by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on contributors. You'll see him right up top there under 107, some of the various contributors to my network. His biography is there. You get to see his extensive military background and civilian work, including the work he's doing today at Australia One. Thank you, Ricardo Bosi. Always great to be with you on Bosi Briefs. And take note to one of my producers who's live with us here right now. We're going to be following up with Ricardo's team and land him a front seat in our monthly panel, which is going to be titled Off-World with JMC. On behalf of America and Australian population, we salute you, sir, and we thank you for your continued service. The oath never sunsets. Thank you, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, and I'll be right back.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel Broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.
You know, it seems like just a casual conversation between Siskel and Chambers and Bosi. But if you go back and listen to the nuggets, to lack of a better term, the extraordinary value and insights that has been provided in this and other episodes, it's remarkable. I captured a few of them. Of course, President Trump acknowledging 3 terms. Ricardo mentioned continuity of government. We are under martial law. This is a military operation, folks. And I, for one, since a lot of our education, not all of it, but a lot of it was indoctrination versus education, I, for one, have learned through life and living the University of Hard Knocks, through books, film, and song. And that's just my quick commentary there. And so you can pick up a copy of Ricardo's book, A Greatness Awaits You. And let's close out with some announcements. Fraud Fighter Summit .us 107 inspired event. Go to the website. Those in America, get on to Las Vegas and meet the panel. Most importantly, the incredible information and solutions that will be provided at the Fraud Fighter Summit. All right, healthcare again. We are launching here at JMC Broadcasting. I don't have the date yet. We'll be producing promos with definitives for you in another week or so. But we will be launching in the month of June an entire healthcare set of reporting, just as we do military intelligence and economic reporting, lean and mean, with a couple of military panels and my one-off shows. We will be doing the same exact model, giving healthcare the light of day. And it just happens to be the timing is perfect with what they're trying to unleash again. Hey, get a piece of cheese, get your vax, mouse in the trap. All right, so stay tuned and do not comply, please. And we will be also launching, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, Off-World with JMC. As we've just learned, Ricardo has committed to being part of that panel. It'll be a 4-panel show. It'll be monthly, and we'll introduce some new names, some new faces, at least into my space, perhaps yours, and some familiar faces that will be going over their personal experiences with off-planet entities, as well as following what President Trump will be not leaking, but will be providing back out for the first time to the world. And so we intend to cover this. This is going to be an interesting journey that we can go on together. So stay tuned. This will also be launched in June. So we've been pretty busy over here at JMC Broadcasting. I want to thank my 2 producers and the rest of our team for making all of this possible, especially the expansion. I can't mention the show host yet. That will be the face of the healthcare, as I'm the face of military intelligence and economic. She will be the face of the healthcare, and we so much look forward to this show host, who many of you know. Mystery Sandwich, stick around. We'll be revealing that very soon. Again, I want to thank our good friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, for his keen insights and brilliant analysis, helping us all to make sense of the madness. I want to wish everyone a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, be ready, and may God be with you.